When my son, Daniel, told me he'd found the one, I was genuinely happy for him. He'd always been a quiet, hard-working boy, never the type to chase after girls or talk much about love. So when he said her name, Sophia, and his eyes lit up like I'd never seen before, I knew this was serious. A few weeks later, he sat me down at the kitchen table, fiddling with his coffee mug, and said, "Mom, I want you to meet her family. But please, just try not to overdo it." I frowned. Overdo what? He sighed, the kind of sigh that carries more than words. You know how you get. You're confident. You talk about the business, the house. They're a little traditional. Her parents like simple people. Just be yourself, but maybe tone it down a little. I didn't know whether to laugh or be offended. Tone it down? I'd worked my whole life to build something out of nothing, raising him alone after his father passed, managing 2 jobs, and eventually opening a small store that grew into something decent. But if my son was worried I'd scare off his future in-laws, fine. I could play along. The day of the meeting, I stood in front of my wardrobe longer than I care to admit. My usual style, pressed blouses, a nice handbag, small gold earrings, suddenly felt like too much. Instead, I picked a faded floral dress, the one I wore for gardening, and tied my hair in a loose bun. I even swapped my gold studs for cheap plastic ones. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Daniel seemed relieved when he saw me. "You look perfect, Mom," he said, smiling nervously. I could tell he meant inoffensive. Sophia's parents lived in a big house, not fancy, but you could tell they wanted to appear important. When we arrived, her mother, a tall woman with carefully dyed brown hair, gave me a polite but tight smile. Her father was more direct, his handshake limp but assessing, his eyes flicking over my clothes. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Ramirez," he said. "Daniel told us you're from out of town." "Yes," I said softly, lowering my voice, "from a small place just outside the city. I still live there." He nodded, clearly pleased. Sophia's mother gestured for me to sit, but when she poured tea, she didn't pour mine first. Small things like that. They tell you everything. I smiled through it, playing the quiet, grateful mother. I let them do most of the talking. They spoke about Sophia's education, her job at a marketing firm, their plans for the couple to move to a better neighborhood. I noticed how Daniel avoided my eyes when her father said, "Of course, we'll help them with the down payment. It's important they start on the right foot." Her mother laughed softly, adding, "We just want Sophia to marry someone responsible, someone from a good family." That last part stung, but I kept my hands folded in my lap and nodded like I agreed. When the evening ended, Daniel hugged me in the car and said, "Thank you, Mom. You were perfect." He didn't know it yet, but I'd seen everything I needed to see that night. The way they measured people by appearances, how they smiled only when it suited them. And though I kept my quiet smile, a little part of me whispered, "They have no idea who they just met." After that first dinner, Daniel called me almost every night. He'd talk about wedding venues, colors, guest lists, all the things I'd never thought I'd hear him care about. I listened, smiled, and encouraged him. I didn't say much about Sophia's parents, but I kept thinking about the way they looked at me, like I was a fragile old woman who didn't know what fork to use. A week later, Sophia invited me to their family's Sunday lunch. Daniel asked if I could keep it simple again. His words, not mine. I wanted to tell him how small that made me feel, but I didn't. I just said, "Of course, mijo. Whatever makes you happy." That morning, I left my jewelry on the dresser and chose the plainest outfit I had. A worn cardigan, scuffed shoes, and a handbag with frayed straps. I even took the bus instead of driving my car. When I walked up to their gate, Sophia's father was outside watering the plants. He looked at me, surprised. "You came by bus?" he asked. "Yes," I said, smiling politely. "It's easier for me." "I don't drive much these days," he nodded with that thin kind of smile. The kind you give someone you think is beneath you, but you're trying to be polite about it. Inside, Sophia's mother was already setting the table. She wore pearls, her nails manicured like she'd never washed a dish in her life. "Oh, Mrs. Ramirez," she said with forced cheer, "you made it. Please sit. I hope you don't mind simple food." I looked around the table. Roasted chicken, fresh salad, homemade pie. Nothing simple about it. But I smiled and said, "Oh, this is lovely. I'm not picky. Anything is fine for me. I played my role well." When they asked what I did, I said, "Oh, I just sell a few things at the market. Small stuff. Nothing big." I could feel Daniel's discomfort. He knew it wasn't the full truth, but he didn't correct me. Sophia's mother gave a delicate laugh. "That's so humble. You must be proud of Daniel then. He's really going places." "I am," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "He's my only son. I just want him to be happy." They smiled like I'd said exactly what they wanted to hear. I noticed how they relaxed around me, like I was no longer a threat. They spoke more freely, carelessly even. Sophia's father mentioned how some families try to take advantage during weddings. Her mother nodded, adding, "Well, Sophia is lucky. Daniel seems like a good man, even if his background is modest." I kept my face calm, but my stomach tightened. Modest. That was their polite word for not good enough. When lunch ended, Sophia's father offered to call me a taxi. "I assume you don't use those apps," he said with a half smile. I thanked him and said I'd manage on my own. As I walked away, I caught a glimpse of them through the window, leaning close to each other, whispering and smirking. On the bus ride home, I watched the city pass by, the buildings, the people, the lives crossing paths. I thought about how quickly they'd decided who I was based on my clothes, my bag, my quietness. And I realized something. Pretending to be poor wasn't just about humility anymore. It had become my mirror, showing me exactly who they were when they thought no one important was watching. After that lunch, I saw Sophia's family a few more times, once for her birthday, then again for a small dinner they organized to discuss the engagement. Every time, I stayed in character, quiet, polite, a little unsure of myself, the kind of woman they thought I was. And every time their true colors bled through a little more. At Sophia's birthday party, her mother was introducing everyone to each other. Her cousin the dentist, her uncle the architect, her friend the lawyer. When it came to me, she hesitated for half a second before saying, "And this is Daniel's mother. She's from a small town." No mention of my name. No mention of what I did. Just that. From a small town. Like a label. I smiled, nodded, and said, "Nice to meet you all." But inside I felt that pinch of humiliation that burns deep, the one you hide behind a polite face. The other guests smiled kindly, but their eyes did what their words didn't. A flicker of pity, a hint of superiority. You can always tell. Later that night, I overheard something that made me go cold. I had gone to the kitchen to get some water and passed by the patio door. Sophia was outside with her mother, talking in low voices. "She's sweet, Mom, but I just hope Daniel doesn't expect much from her," Sophia said softly. "I mean, what can she even contribute?" "My parents are already covering most of the wedding." Her mother replied, "Exactly. And that's fine, dear. Some people just don't have the same opportunities. It's not their fault. Be kind, but don't depend on them." I stood there, the glass of water trembling in my hand. I didn't move, didn't breathe. When I finally stepped back, I forced myself to smile again, to keep pretending. That night, Daniel drove me home. He was tired, but happy. "I think they're finally warming up to you, Mom," he said, smiling at the road. I looked at his face. My son, who thought love meant pretending everything was fine. I didn't have the heart to tell him what I'd heard. Not yet. But it wasn't just them. Sophia, too, had started talking to me differently. At first, she'd been warm, calling me Mama after dinner, asking for my recipes. Now she spoke to me like I was someone's distant relative. Always polite, but distant. "Oh, don't worry, Mrs. Ramirez," she'd say when I offered to help. "Just sit and relax." We've got it covered. Each word chipped away at something inside me. At home, I'd take off my worn cardigan and hang it neatly on the chair. Then I'd sit in silence, the quiet house pressing against me. I'd remember the years I'd worked double shifts so Daniel could study, the nights I went without dinner to make sure he could eat. And now, somehow, I'd become a woman they pitied. Still, I didn't stop pretending, because by now I was curious. I wanted to see just how far their arrogance would go, and deep down, I already knew. The truth, when it finally came out, would hit them harder than they could ever imagine. By the time the wedding plans began in earnest, I had learned to keep my face as calm as still water. Sophia's family, on the other hand, was in full motion, talking about venues, photographers, flower arrangements, and guest lists like they were planning a royal event. I attended every meeting I was invited to, though invited might be a generous word. Most times I was informed, not asked. One evening, they gathered at Sophia's parents' house for what was supposed to be a planning dinner. I came with a small notebook, ready to take notes and offer help if needed. But the moment I stepped in, it was clear they'd already made all the decisions. "We've chosen the venue," Sophia's mother announced, smiling like she was unveiling something grand. "The Belvista Hall. It's elegant, but tasteful, not too extravagant." Daniel looked surprised. "Wait, I thought Mom wanted to see the places too." Her father waved a hand. "It's all settled, son. You'll love it. We're handling the deposits and arrangements. We just want you two to focus on enjoying your engagement." I smiled faintly. "That's very kind of you," I said, my voice even. "Let me know how I can help." "Oh, you've done enough," her mother replied quickly. "Really, just your presence is enough." You must be so proud of Daniel. That word again, just. It was always their way of patting me on the head. Just be there. Just smile. Just stay quiet. I stayed through the dinner, eating slowly, nodding politely. But something shifted in me that night. Watching Sophia's mother take over every detail, watching her father talk about how his side would cover the big expenses, while Daniel's side could handle the smaller things. I realized they didn't just see me as poor, they saw me as irrelevant. After the meal, I went into the kitchen to help with dishes. Sophia followed me. "Mrs. Ramirez," she said softly, glancing toward the doorway to make sure no one was listening. "I hope you don't mind that my parents are taking charge. They just like to help." "I don't mind," I said, keeping my back to her as I rinsed a plate. "As long as it makes Daniel happy." She hesitated, then added, "They really want everything to be perfect. You know how appearances matter in our circle." That last word, "our," lingered in the air. I turned, drying my hands slowly. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Appearances are very important." When I got home that night, I went into my office, the one with the big wooden desk and the framed photos of the store's opening day. I looked around at what I had built over decades, the business that had grown into 3 branches, the property deeds neatly stacked in folders, the awards tucked away in drawers because I'd never been one to boast. I thought about the faded dress hanging on the chair, the one I wore to look humble. And for the first time, I laughed, quietly, bitterly. They thought they were marrying into modesty. They thought Daniel came from a woman with calloused hands and no ambition. They had no idea that the house they sat in for all those dinners, the one they admired for its charm, it belonged to me. And though I wasn't a woman who liked to humiliate others, I knew the truth always finds its way out, sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. It happened on a Saturday afternoon, not through any plan of mine, but by sheer accident. Maybe fate decided it had watched enough. Sophia and Daniel came over to visit me, bringing her parents along to see where Daniel grew up. I'd suggested we meet at a restaurant, but her mother insisted. "We'd love to see your home," she said sweetly over the phone. "I think it's important to know where our future son-in-law comes from." I agreed, though I could hear the undertone. She wanted to see my little village house, the place she probably imagined had peeling paint and a leaky roof. When they arrived, I opened the gate myself. Their eyes widened the moment they stepped through. The garden, trimmed hedges, stone path, bright bougainvillea, wasn't what they expected. The house stood tall and solid, painted a warm cream, with polished windows and an iron fence. Her father blinked. "This is your house?" I smiled politely. "Yes, it's home." Sophia's mother tried to recover, her lips curling into a quick smile. "Oh, it's lovely. So charming." "Thank you," I said simply, stepping aside. "Please, come in." They walked through the hallway, taking it all in. The high ceilings, the hardwood floors, the paintings. Nothing extravagant, but tasteful, well cared for. My late husband's photograph hung near the entrance. Daniel had that nervous look again, glancing at Sophia, probably realizing this wasn't what her parents were expecting. When we sat in the living room, her father asked, "So, you've lived here long?" I nodded. "Over 20 years. We built it ourselves, actually." Her mother frowned slightly. "Built? You mean like your husband worked in construction?" I almost laughed. "No," I said gently. "We owned the company that did." Her smile froze. There was a pause, small but heavy. You could feel the air shift, like a curtain being pulled back. Daniel spoke up, his voice quiet. "Mom's company handles property development now. She started with a small store, then grew it. That's actually how she paid for my university." Her parents stared at me, their faces stiff, polite smiles struggling to stay in place. "Oh," her mother said after a moment, her tone noticeably softer. "That's impressive. Really impressive. You should have told us sooner." I gave her the same faint smile I'd been giving since the first day we met. "I didn't think it mattered. You both seemed more interested in simplicity." Her father cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Well, we just didn't want you to feel pressured about expenses." "Of course," I said. "But please don't worry. Daniel's wedding will be taken care of. It's important to me." Sophia's eyes darted to her mother's, a flicker of embarrassment there. For the first time, she looked small, not because I wanted her to, but because she understood how much her family had misjudged me. The rest of the visit passed awkwardly. They complimented everything now, the furniture, the garden, even the teacups, but the words felt hollow. The balance had shifted. They knew it, and I knew it. When they left, Sophia's mother hugged me tightly, her voice sugary sweet. "We're so lucky to have you in the family, Mrs. Ramirez." I smiled, meeting her eyes. "Yes," I said quietly. "You are." When their car pulled away, I stood by the window, watching. It wasn't revenge I felt. Not really. It was relief. Relief that the mask was gone. that I didn't have to pretend to be less than I was just to make others comfortable. The truth had come out, and it had done its work. The truth spread faster than I expected. Within a week, Sophia's tone changed completely, her texts suddenly full of hearts and "love you, Mama" messages. Her mother began calling me too, cheerful and overly polite, always starting with, "Oh, I hope I'm not bothering you." It was almost amusing, if it hadn't been so transparent. One afternoon, she invited me to a wedding coordination lunch. It was the first time she'd done that. Before, I was barely included in any plans. I accepted, curious to see what this new version of her looked like. When I arrived at the restaurant, she stood up immediately, smiling too widely. "There she is," she said loudly, as if she were greeting a celebrity. She kissed my cheek and gestured for the waiter. "Get Mrs. Ramirez whatever she wants. She's our most important guest today." I sat down slowly. The same woman who used to glance at my shoes was now practically hanging on my every word. "So," she began, stirring her coffee, "Sophia tells me you're quite the businesswoman. We had no idea. How impressive. Self-made women like you, that's something to be admired." I smiled faintly. "Yes, it's been a long road. Lots of work, lots of learning." She leaned in, her voice lowering. "You know, we were just discussing the catering and the decor, and I thought maybe we could collaborate on some of the expenses. But, of course, you don't have to worry. We'll make sure everything is perfect." That word again, perfect. She had used it so many times before, but now it meant something entirely different. I looked at her, calm. "Don't worry about the money," I said. "Daniel's my only son. I've already spoken to the event planner. Everything will be covered." Her face froze for a second, like she didn't know how to react. Then she gave a small laugh. "Oh, well, that's incredibly generous of you," Sophia joined in, her tone light but cautious. "You don't have to do that, Mama." "Really, I know," I said softly. "But I want to. I want everything to be beautiful for both of our families. And I meant it. I wasn't trying to show off. I just wanted them to sit with the knowledge that the woman they'd pitied, whispered about, looked down on, was the one quietly holding everything together. As the lunch went on, they tried too hard to impress me. Her father talked about business opportunities. Her mother kept complimenting my taste, and Sophia avoided my eyes the entire time. By the end, I could feel their unease under all the politeness. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was guilt, mixed with the uncomfortable realization that they had shown me who they really were before they knew what I had. That night, Daniel called me. "Mom," he said softly, "Sophia told me about lunch. She said her parents feel terrible about how they acted before. They really do." I could hear the conflict in his voice. He wanted peace, not pride. "That's fine," I told him. "I don't need apologies. Just respect." He was quiet for a moment. "You're incredible. You know that?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "No, mijo," I said. "I just don't forget how people treat me when they think I'm nobody." After that, I kept my distance. I was polite, helpful when needed, but the warmth was gone. I didn't hate them. I just couldn't see them the same way anymore. And they knew it. You could see it in their eyes every time they looked at me. The discomfort of standing in front of someone who'd seen the worst in them and hadn't said a cruel word about it. That silence. That was my revenge. The wedding day came bright and beautiful. A clear sky, the kind of morning that feels like a blessing. Sophia looked stunning. Daniel looked proud. And everywhere I turned, people were smiling, toasting, taking photos. It was everything they had dreamed of. Elegant, tasteful, expensive. And I had paid for it all. Not because I wanted to prove a point, but because I wanted to close this chapter on my terms. Quietly, gracefully, without lowering myself to their level. From the moment I arrived at the venue, I could see how differently her parents behaved around me. Her mother greeted me like I was royalty, holding my hands tightly and whispering, "We'll never forget everything you've done, truly." Her father called me Senora Ramirez now, with respect, not condescension. They didn't know what to do with the guilt that hung between us, so they tried to drown it in flattery. I just smiled. "It's a happy day," I said. "Let's enjoy it." But I could see the way they flinched every time our eyes met, the way her mother's laughter faltered when I passed by. They knew I'd seen them at their ugliest, and I hadn't forgotten. During the reception, the master of ceremonies asked both sets of parents to give a short speech. Sophia's father went first, thanking everyone, talking about family and unity, about how proud they were to see their daughter joining such a wonderful family. He glanced at me a few times, his smile a little too tight. When it was my turn, I stood, took the microphone, and looked at my son, the boy I'd raised with nothing but love and stubbornness. "I don't have a long speech," I said. "I just want to say that I've watched Daniel grow from a quiet boy into the kind of man his father would have been proud of, and seeing him marry a woman he loves, that's all a mother could ask for." I paused, my voice steady but warm. "And I want to thank Sophia's family for welcoming me. Life has a way of showing us who people are. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it gives us the chance to understand each other better. I think we've all learned a little something along the way." The room went still for a moment. Then came the polite applause. I sat down, feeling the weight lift from my chest. That was enough. No bitterness, no revenge speech, just truth wrapped in gentleness. Later that night, as everyone danced and celebrated, Sophia's mother came to me quietly. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes looked tired. "I want to apologize," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We judged you. I judged you, and I'm ashamed of that. I hope you can forgive me." I looked at her for a long moment. "You don't need my forgiveness," I said softly. "You just needed to learn what kind of person you really were when you thought no one important was watching." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. When the music started again, I slipped out onto the terrace. The night air was cool, and the city lights stretched out below like fireflies. I stood there a long time, letting it all settle. The hurt, the pride, the quiet victory. I had pretended to be poor, so they could reveal their riches, or the lack of them, and now they would carry that knowledge forever. That was my silent payback. No anger, no revenge, just dignity. The kind that doesn't need to be announced, only lived. And as I watched my son and his bride laugh on the dance floor, I smiled. Because in the end, the truth had done all the talking for me.